Growling in his belly woke Grey Wing. The pangs of hunger had seemed even sharper since Stoneteller's announcement a few sunrises ago, and the cavern hadn't stopped buzzing with discussions about whether it was a good idea to leave, and what the new place might be like. Still curled up in his sleeping hollow, Grey Wing could hear excited chatter from cats nearby. "What do you think we'll get to hunt?" Grey Wing recognized Dappled Pelt's voice. "Maybe different kinds of birds, or those squirrels that the elders put in their stories." "We'll have to be careful." That was Cloud Spots, sounding thoughtful as usual. "If we eat too much we'll get too fat to hunt, and then where will we be?" Grey Wing heard a snort of laughter from Snow Hare. "That's a problem I'd like to have." He lifted his head to see the three cats sitting close together, along with Tall Shadow, who extended her black-furred limbs gracefully as she rose to her paws. "I wonder what new hunting techniques we'll need to learn. It's bound to be different in the new place." "Well, you've always been good at creeping around," Snow Hare mewed teasingly. "You'll be able to sneak up on your prey while it's asleep." Tall Shadow gave her chest for a complacent lick. "I just might do that." Scrambling out of the sleeping hollow, Grey Wing shook scraps of moss and feather from his pelt and arched his back in a good long stretch. He decided to go and hunt. There's no point in wondering about prey somewhere else when we need to eat now. Sunlight came slanting into the cave, turning the screen of water into a dazzling sparkle. As Grey Wing emerged from the path behind the fall, he saw that the sky was clear blue. Grey Wing's pads tingled at the beauty of the peaks outlined against it. He took great gulps of the cold, crisp air, relishing the way it felt like water against his fur. How could I leave all this? Continuing along the snow-packed ledge, hardened by the paw steps of many cats, Grey Wing heard voices coming from somewhere above. "Bright Stream, you have to come with me." Looking up, he spotted Clear Sky and Bright Stream at the top of the cliff where the water poured over the lip of the rocks. "It'll be great," Clear Sky went on, "exploring new places together." Bright Stream turned her head away. "I don't know. This is my home, and we've survived so far. Don't you want more than just surviving?" Clear Sky asked, curling his tail persuasively around Bright Stream's shoulders. "I want to go, but it wouldn't be the same without you." Bright Stream's eyes shone, but she shook her head. "I've still got a few days to decide," she mewed. Leaving Clear Sky gazing after her, she bounded lightly down the rocks. Despite himself, Grey Wing's heart quickened as he saw her approaching. She's lovely, but she'll be Clear Sky's mate one day. He's a lucky Tom, that's for sure. "Can I hunt with you?" Bright Stream asked as she leaped off the last rock to stand at Grey Wing's side. "Just don't be like Clear Sky and pester me about leaving the mountains with shaded moss." "I won't," Grey Wing promised. "I haven't made up my own mind yet. For once I wish you poor hunting," Clear Sky called down from the top of the rocks. "Then you'll realize that we have to leave." Grey Wing gave him a good-humored wave of his tail, and headed for the ridge. Bright Stream scrambled after him. As they drew closer to the summit, icy wind blasted their fur and scoured the snow from the rocks, leaving them bare and grey. Dark, yellowish clouds massed on the horizon, promising more snow to come. With his back to the gale, Grey Wing gazed around and spotted 3 more cats farther down the valley, tiny black shapes, too far away for him to distinguish who they were, pursuing a hawk that flew low over the slopes and gradually drew out of sight. Bright Stream's voice broke the vast silence of the mountains. "Grey Wing, what do you think about Stoneteller's dream?" Grey Wing hesitated before replying. "I don't know," he confessed at last. "Can Stoneteller really have discovered a new place for us to live, without knowing exactly where it is? Why haven't any other cats had the same dream?" "Maybe it's something only Stoneteller can do," Bright Stream suggested. She paused, blinking thoughtfully. Grey Wing could see anxiety in her beautiful green eyes. "I love living in the mountains," she went on. "In spite of the cold and hunger. I always imagined I'd raise my kits here, But then, I always imagined their father would be Clear Sky. As she finished speaking, she turned her head away, giving her shoulder a couple of embarrassed licks. Grey Wing was surprised that she had confessed so much to him. She was always perfectly confident and self-contained. He felt a stab of envy that she had the courage to put aside her own hopes and dreams to travel into the unknown with Clear Sky, and that her bond with his brother was so strong. Before he could decide what to say, Bright Stream gave her pelt a shake. "You should probably forget I said all that," she meowed. "And don't you dare tell Clear Sky. I don't want him to think I've made a decision yet." "I won't say a word," Grey Wing promised. "I'm being torn in two," he thought. "Clear Sky and I have always done everything together. Now I have to choose between going with him or staying here with the rest of my kin, in this place I've always called home." A flicker of movement distracted him from his problems. Snow Hare. Spinning around, he raced across the slope after his prey. Its thick white pelt hid it against the snow, but it stood out clearly when scampering over the rocks of the wind-blown ridge. Bright Stream joined the chase, but Grey Wing outpaced her, relishing the feeling of the wind in his whiskers as he sped over the rocks. With a final mighty leap, he flung himself onto his prey. The hare's squeal of panic was cut off as Grey Wing's jaws met in its throat. "Great catch," Bright Stream panted. "You're so fast." "It's not bad," Grey Wing mewed, prodding his prey with one paw. For once there seemed to be some flesh on its bones. "We can eat and still take some back to the cave." He and Bright Stream settled down side by side to enjoy the catch. As they feasted, he took in the magnificent peaks and valleys that stretched in front of them. "You're going to stay, aren't you?" Bright Stream asked, fixing him with her clear green gaze. Grey Wing took a deep breath. "Yes, I am." When they had eaten their fill, the two cats picked up the remains of the hare and headed back toward the cave. Triumph flooded through Grey Wing at the thought of feeding his tribemates. When the waterfall came in sight, he spotted a group of cats toiling up the slope toward them. Shaded Moss was in the lead, with Clear Sky padding along at his shoulder. Tall Shadow, Dappled Pelt, and Rainswept Flower followed close behind. Turtle Tail brought up the rear. "Hi," Clear Sky meowed as the group came up. "Hey, you caught a hare." Grey Wing gave a nod of satisfaction. "Yes, we're just taking it back." "We're climbing up to the ridge," Clear Sky explained, sweeping his tail around to include his companions. "We want to look for the best way to get out of the mountains toward the sunrise." "Aren't you joining us?" Turtle Tail asked, bounding up to Grey Wing's side. Grey Wing hesitated. He was sure now about his decision to stay, but he didn't want to share it with the other cats just yet. "We're tired from hunting," he replied. "Maybe later." Entering the cave, Grey Wing could feel how restless his tribemates were. Some were gathered in little groups around the edges of the cavern, talking together in hushed voices. Others paced to and fro as if they were too anxious to settle. There was no sign of Stoneteller. "Do you think they're really going to leave?" Stone Song muttered as he and his mate Hollow Tree padded past. "I guess so," Hollow Tree responded. "Are they flea-brained? They have no idea what's out there, or whether the place they're looking for even exists." Grey Wing knew that they spoke for many of the tribe. He wished that Stoneteller had never had her vision, or that she had never spoken of it. "Doesn't she know how it's tearing the tribe apart?" "But why can't I go?" Jagged Peak was heading for the cave entrance, only to be intercepted by Quiet Rain. "For the last time," his mother meowed, her tail tip twitching impatiently. "You are too little to be out of the cave." "It's not fair." Jagged Peak's shoulder fur bristled as he glared at his mother. "Come on, Jagged Peak." Snow Hare padded up, dipping her head to Quiet Rain as she approached. "I'll show you a new game. Let's see if you can catch this stone." She swiped her paw and sent a flat pebble skimming across the floor of the cave. Jagged Peak pelted after it with an excited squeal. "Thanks, Stone Hare," Quiet Rain murmured. I can't let him go out while there's deep snow on the ground. You're welcome, the elder responded. Grey Wing carried the remains of the hare over to his mother and dropped it at her paws. Here, do you want some? He asked. Quiet Rain purred her gratitude. That's a fine catch, she told him. I'll take some of it to Fluttering Bird. Her voice quivered as she added, she couldn't get out of the nest this morning. But she'll be much better after she's had something to eat. Grey Wing followed his mother as she carried the hare across the cave to the sleeping hollow where Fluttering Bird was curled up. Are you going with Shaded Moss? Quiet Rain asked him as she set the prey down at the edge of the hollow. I know Clear Sky will go. She was clearly trying to speak lightly, but her words ended with a sorrowful sigh. I'm staying, Grey Wing told her, touching her ear with his nose. This is my home. I want to catch enough prey so that the rest of us can survive. Many moons ago, our ancestors left the lake and came here. I can't believe that was for no reason. Quiet Rain rested her muzzle on the top of his head. I'm so proud of you, she murmured. For a few heartbeats, Grey Wing felt the same sense of comfort and security as when he was a small kit, suckling at his mother's belly. Stooping over the sleeping hollow, Quiet Rain licked Fluttering Bird's shoulder. Wake up, little one, she mewed. I've got some food for you. A sharp pang of anxiety stabbed through Grey Wing as he looked at Fluttering Bird. She hardly seemed to be breathing. Fluttering Bird. Quiet Rain prodded her with one forepaw, but the kit still didn't wake. Grey Wing, fetch Stone Teller, his mother said, panic in her voice. Grey Wing sped off across the cave and plunged down the tunnel that led into the cavern of the pointed stones. He had only been there once before, and he slowed as he reached the entrance, overcome by awe in spite of his urgency. Creeping into the cave, he saw narrow beams of sunlight slanting through the hole in the roof, lighting the columns of stone that stretched upward for many tail lengths. Pools on the ground reflected the sunlight, and the huge hollow space was filled with the sound of steadily dripping water. At first Grey Wing couldn't see Stone Teller. Then he spotted her sitting in the shadows, her tail wrapped around her paws and her eyes closed. Is she asleep? He wondered as he approached. But as he drew closer, Stone Teller opened her eyes. Grey Wing, is something wrong? She mewed. It's Fluttering Bird, Grey Wing explained, his heart beating fast. She won't wake up. At once Stone Teller rose to her paws. Turning to a crack in the rock, she took out a few shriveled leaves. Grey Wing caught a glimpse of her pitifully small store, and knew there would be no more healing herbs until the snow melted and warmer weather brought new growth. He followed Stone Teller to where Fluttering Bird lay. Quiet Rain stood beside her, flexing her claws impatiently. Looking into her eyes, Grey Wing saw how desperate she was, already sick with grief for her daughter. Stone Teller bent over the tiny kit and rested one paw on her chest to feel her breathing and her heartbeat. Chewing up one of the leaves, Stone Teller pried open the kit's jaws and pushed the pulp onto her tongue. Come along, little one, she murmured. Swallow this. It will make you feel better. But Fluttering Bird stayed still. She didn't even open her eyes. Looking up at Quiet Rain, Stone Teller whispered, she is far, far away from us. The hunger inside her is too great. You must prepare yourself, Quiet Rain. Grey Wing's mother crouched down, her claws scraping on the stone floor of the cave. This is my fault, she mewed. I should have given her all my food. What was I thinking, having kits in the cold season? His heart swelling with grief, Grey Wing padded over to Quiet Rain and pressed himself close to her. It isn't your fault, he mewed. I should have. Stone Teller interrupted Quiet Rain with a raised paw. Hush, Quiet Rain. Fluttering Bird might be able to hear you. Don't let her go into the dark knowing that you're scared and angry. Grey Wing could see the massive effort his mother made to calm herself. She slid into the sleeping hollow and curled herself around Fluttering Bird, giving her comforting licks. I'm so proud of you, my only daughter, she murmured. You mean so much to all of us. We will never forget you. Misery swept over Grey Wing as he watched. His sister's flank rose once more, and then was still. "Goodbye, fluttering bird," he whispered. Stoneteller dipped her head to quiet Rain and padded away toward her tunnel. Grey Wing turned back to his mother. "Do you want me to help you take Fluttering Bird outside and bury her?" he asked. Quiet Rain curled herself more closely around her daughter's body. "Not while her fur is still warm," she replied. "Please, go and fetch Jagged Peak for me." Grey Wing glanced around and spotted Jagged Peak at the far side of the cave, playing with some of the other kits. He raced over and beckoned his brother with a flick of his tail. "What is it?" Jagged Peak asked, looking up from where he was wrestling with a tabby she-cat. "Our mother wants you," Grey Wing replied. Jagged Peak scrambled to his paws and trotted across the cavern to the sleeping hollow. Quiet Rain spoke quietly to Jagged Peak. He stared at her, then opened his jaws in a shrill wail. Quiet Rain stretched out her tail and pulled Jagged Peak to her. Pain stabbed through Grey Wing like a spike of icy rock as he watched her holding both her kits close, one dead and one alive, her nose buried in their fur. He wondered if she would ever let Jagged Peak go again. Grey Wing turned toward the cave entrance at the sound of voices, and saw Shaded Moss returning with Clear Sky and the others who had gone to look for a route away from the mountains. It was great. Clear Sky shook himself, scattering melting snow everywhere. "We've found the path we should take." "It runs along the side of the valley," Shaded Moss meowed, sounding more cautious. "It leads to a gap that should take us clear of the mountains. There's a frozen stream at one point that we'll have to cross, and we'll need to be careful. But it's still the quickest route." Turtletail interrupted with an enthusiastic wave of her tail. "It looks like it," Shaded Moss agreed, "and with any luck we'll avoid the drifts farther down." While the other cats crowded around to question Shaded Moss, Grey Wing padded up and touched Clear Sky on his shoulder with his tail tip. Clear Sky glanced around, spotting Quiet Rain in her sleeping hollow with the two kits. His eyes widened. "What happened?" he asked. "Fluttering Bird is dead," Grey Wing told him. Clear Sky paused for a heartbeat with a sharp indrawn breath, then bounded across the cave to his mother's side. Grey Wing padded after him more slowly. "I'm so sorry," Clear Sky exclaimed, bending his head to touch his nose to his sister's ear. "Fluttering Bird, we'll miss you so much." Straightening up, he looked down at his mother and added, "This will never happen when we reach our new home. If you join us, I'll protect you and hunt for you for the rest of my life. Please come." Quiet Rain shook her head. "I will never leave my daughter here alone." Rising from the sleeping hollow, she allowed Grey Wing and Clear Sky to pick up Fluttering Bird's tiny, twig-like body and carry her out of the cave. The other cats fell back and formed a respectful line on either side as they headed for the entrance and along the ledge that led behind the waterfall. Quiet Rain and Jagged Peak followed as they maneuvered Fluttering Bird's body along the narrow path. Drops of water landed on her fur. Grey Wing winced when he realized that she would never be able to lick them off. Climbing carefully over the icy rocks, they made their way to the plateau above the cave and set Fluttering Bird down beside the river. Grey Wing and Clear Sky scraped away small stones and frozen soil to make a shallow hole, and Quiet Rain laid the tiny kit inside. She touched her nose to her daughter's fur one last time, then stepped back while her sons covered the body with earth and larger stones. For a moment all four cats stood beside the grave, their heads bowed. Jagged Peak was the first to move, turning around to stare in amazement at the vista of mountains that stretched away on all sides. His eyes were huge and his fur bushed out. He looked tiny against the boulders. "Have you been to all those peaks?" he asked in a hushed voice. "Not all of them." Clear Sky moved to stand beside him, pointing with his tail. "There's the gap in the mountains we'll be aiming for when we leave." Jagged Peak's eyes grew even wider. "I wish I was coming too," he meowed. "Don't talk nonsense, little one." Quiet Rain padded up and laid her tail across the kit's back. "You've been out long enough for your first time. Back to the cave with you." "But I don't want to go back inside." Jagged Peak protested. There's too much to see. Clear Sky gave his younger brother a friendly nudge. You can see it another day. The mountains don't move. Now show us how well you can climb down the rocks. Still grumbling, Jagged Peak followed his brother. Grey Wing stood for a moment at the cliff's edge, gazing out at the cold sweep of the mountains. Rage was slowly building inside him like a storm cloud. How could such a beautiful place be so cruel? But the sharpest edge of his anger was directed at himself. I should have caught more prey. I shouldn't have let fluttering birds starve. He became aware that Quiet Rain had come to stand beside him. This is a cruel place, she sighed, echoing his thoughts. But it's my home, for better or worse. I won't let this happen again, Grey Wing meowed, his voice rough with grief and fury. There must be better ways of hunting. You have to leave, Quiet Rain interrupted. Jagged Peak is too small for such a journey, but you must go with Clear Sky to find a better place to live. I don't want to have to watch your kits die too. Grey Wing stared at her, astounded. But I thought you wanted me to stay, he exclaimed. Quiet Rain gazed back at him steadily, her eyes full of sorrow. I love you too much for that, she mewed. For my sake, go.